hours. Like, I know this. You tell me this.
If we did an 8-hour vid, that would be terrifying.
Oh my god.
I mean, I could see us doing that, but it would be ridiculous.
We're online, right?
We are.
Okay, where's Talk?
There
There it is.
Chat.
This scheduled stream hasn't started yet. Refresh. Bro, start. Damn it. Oh, there we go. Okay.
We're just having issues today.
Yes, all the issues. Okay. I'm working on updating the journal now. Online.
And now we wait.
Wait a bit. Do not make inappropriate noises, it's rude.
What?
Oh dear.
Okay.
Wait, was that directed at me or?
Well, when you reach for something and you make noises and we have no context.
Chica makes noises when she grabs things like pillows and computers. You should be used to this by now.
They see our icons. Hey, everyone.
No.
Oh, Sissy, your icon shows up, the updated one.
Yay!
I guess it just doesn't show up for us.
Apparently so.
That was
So
all
rude.
That was thanks to Chi. She thought of getting the screen cap.
Okay. Just y'all in the chat, give us a shout out, like, once you've joined, so we have a basic idea of how many people are watching. I'm sad I can't see Sissy's updated icon on our little window.
I'm sad I can't see anybody's.
Oh.
I really like you guys.
We like you too.
Yeah.
Okay. Crazy's on, Flo is on, Lou is on.
Alright, I think
La Lucius, la Lulu. Actually, Lou, how do you pronounce your name?
Sam is on. Oh, maybe we could ask Sam about.
I was just thinking that. Sam, is your OC's name pronounced Ada or Ada?
It's been driving us crazy. Ada or Ada? I mean, yeah.
I mean, like, it's such a small thing, but it's important.
Yeah. Don't wanna.
Kind of like me.
What if we've been pronouncing it both ways wrong? Okay, it's the second one, Ada.
Okay.
I have a friend named Ada. Ada. Blah, 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 blah. What?
One of them.
Okay, I think for the most part everyone is on. We'll probably have more people joining as the journal gets viewed. But,
Yeah.
Okay. So welcome back to D.Gray-Talk.
Yeah.
Today we will be covering the kind of controversial topic of ripping off versus inspiration.
Kind of controversial. Okay.
Wow.
Oh, it's kind of not. Oh, I don't know. It's not.
Depends.
Just saying it isn't going to get people all like bursting into flames like Mary Sue does. Almost, but not
True.
quite as much.
That is true. Speaking of, again, we're covering ripping off and what is inspiration, like the differences and all that. Y'all have read the journal. But one thing we would like to mention real quick is that, well, I don't know about real quick, but anyway, the thing about ripping off and copying and talking about it is that it's very hard to discuss it in a general manner because what constitutes as ripping off or copying depends very highly on like context and the specifics of what's going on and so forth. So we'll try to be very specific in like the subjects we'll be covering today or the examples so that it's not too generalized because when it's generalized, that's when the gray areas show up and so forth. But there's still probably going to be gray areas, and again, the line between inspiration and ripping off is very thin. So we're definitely encouraging lots of discussion in the chat and lots of back and forth.
And also keep in mind that depending on people's experience with this topic, everyone's going to be more sensitive to certain lines than other people.
Yeah, and just to get that out there, like, I know myself, Mojo, and Chica have been ripped off before, whether small or large.
Oh.
So if we say something that's like very strict and you're like, I don't know if I agree with that, please like mention it so we can discuss it, because again, it's gonna vary depending on the experiences individual people have had with this. So.
And we're going to try and be non-biased, but just because of the fact that we have experienced this, there's going to be a certain influence there that we won't be able to control. But yeah, even so, please let us know whatever your thoughts are. This is all about community and discussion, not just what Chi, Mojo, Chica, and Begin think.
Right. And if you guys are uncomfortable voicing it like publicly in the chat, feel free to like send us one of the asks on here and like write in parentheses or something if you don't want us saying who it is from, or like note one of us.
Yeah, that's perfect way to do it.
Because yeah, we do have the Q&A open, so yeah.
Hi, Goto.
Also, I apologize if my voice is a little bit wonky. I don't know why, but today it's decided to be weird. So if you need me to say something again, then please just let me know, and I'll try and reiterate in a way that is understandable.
Yeah. I think the best way to start out this talk is definitely like defining what exactly rip-off and copying and inspiration is. Sissy, I know you looked up those definitions.
Oh gosh, okay, sorry.
I am going to make you talk.
I didn't have it quite open. Yeah, we were discussing this right before the video started, actually. So the definitions for ripping off and copying vary a little bit based on Webster's dictionary, at least. In that, ripping off, I can't find it anymore.
I think ripping off was like fraud or something associated with that.
Right, and it's usually of, I guess, lesser quality, implied by the definition at least.
Think of a knockoff brand of chips.
Yeah, or like of a brand or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you go.
No, you're fine.
We will make you talk, Sissy.
I was going to get the Transformers anyway, so you keep it relevant.
Oh yeah, you're fine. Whereas copying, I guess, was just more like, it's not even like lesser quality necessarily. You're just adding nothing of your own to it, and it's a straight up replica of whatever the original was.
Yeah, and while there are like subtle differences between these two terms, like most people will use them both as the same thing. So like if we do switch between and you're like, well, that's not really quite with the definition, that's why. So.
Well then, if you guys don't mind, I have a little saying here that I found on I think it was like a blog about computers. It said it's about the difference between drawing inspiration to create something new versus slavishly copying to create something derivative. Basically, it's the difference between seeing something, thinking, I want to use this and make it my own, versus just recreating what you've already seen, and it's basically the same, only, like you guys said, lesser quality.
Yeah, and one thing, again, like, a shout out to the people who responded to the polls. Thank you very much. It seemed like everyone had a general consensus, like what is definitely like a sign that it's a possible ripoff is if the character looks like another character and you confuse the two. And I agree with that to a point. I definitely think if you see a character and you're like, wow, they look exactly like this character, I actually thought they were that character, there's probably an issue there. But again, like, you know, you've got things like a lot of white characters with blonde hair and blue eyes. And you can't really claim no one can do this, you know, because that's a really commonplace thing. And so, like, this is one of the gray areas we're going to be discussing a lot.
Yeah. That's it, guys. Go enjoy your spring break.
I wish. And Gaze Rage. Oh shit! I pronounced it wrong again. I'm not gonna bother trying because I'm still practicing. But Razy just mentioned like copying homework from someone or just rewording the same homework to make it original. And she could just mention plagiarism, and you can get expelled for plagiarism. So that's something kind of to think about when you're doing your written stuff, because that's still a form of copying that can really piss people off.
Yeah. Like, on one hand, artists, like, we learn by seeing things that we like and trying to recreate it, but I think there's a certain spirit of respect for the original content. Like, if you see something that, for example, it looks really good, or if you're reading or writing and it's written really well, and you want to utilize that in a way, I think the big thing to keep in mind is respect the original person who wrote or drew that, because if you just straight up rip off what they did, that is completely disrespectful. And if that person were to see that, they wouldn't think that it's flattering. They would think, oh, you just totally stole that from me. Thank you for nothing. That is really not cool.
Can I say the quote? The fun
Yes.
quote? Okay, I feel special. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you who have ran into the rip-off copying issue have gotten this quote. It's imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Now, the problem with that is that quote is not actually the full quote.
And it's
The
been
full
taken out
quote
of context.
is actually imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. And that's a quote by Oscar Wilde, if you want to look it up. But yeah, for some reason, people split it in half and use it in the exact opposite context it's meant to be used.
Oh, the same with blood is thicker than water. The original context is blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Literally, it originally meant that friendship is stronger than family, but we cut out a couple of those little words in there so that it means family is stronger than friends.
So it's like, you know, if anyone ever says, oh, well, it's flattering that they copied you, it's a flattering thing. And you can say, no, that's mediocrity can pay to greatness. Sorry.
It's flattering if you're admitting that you're mediocre compared to me. Which nobody wants to say that, so it's like, please don't say it.
And just to be clear, I mean, as a lot of people pointed out too, inspiration is a positive thing. Being inspired by others is a good thing. You can learn from them, and you can expand from a detail you really like. The problem is a lot of people get inspired and they don't make that detail theirs. They just take that detail and copy and paste it onto their character, and that's when there tends to be a problem.
Yeah.
I kind of find that when I am inspired, that it's important to have a degree of separation from inspiration, which doesn't seem to make sense, but at the same time, you'll be going off of your memory, and your memory will distort that. And then as you're looking at different things that may inspire you equally, that original idea you were inspired by gets distorted into something else, which you can ultimately make into something that's completely your own. So I think it's just important that you take some time between being inspired and creating something from that inspiration, so that you can find something that's your own, still has some allusion back to the original inspiration, but it's firmly different and unique.
Yeah, and like I think a part of that, the people who don't wait, is probably like how it's resulted, how we've had issues where a character is uploaded and the day after or a few days after a character that has similar qualities is uploaded. If you don't want to have that waiting period, another thing to think about is that ripping off takes minimal effort. So if it only took you like a few seconds or a few minutes to put that detail on your character, try again. Like, inspiration is putting a decent amount of effort and originality and creativity of your own into that thing you were inspired by. So you make it your own, and so people don't look at that detail and go, oh, that's from so-and-so.
Well, and plus, like, if you put a lot of work into something, then it's clear that you care about it. For example, if somebody is really into a video game, say, I'll just throw out their Skyrim, and they completely love the lore and they work that into their character, then it shows. But if I, as somebody who literally knows nothing about Skyrim except that it's a first-person fantasy game, were to look at that character and say, oh, that looks really cool, and rip it off and put it on my character, that not only is extremely tacky, but it completely does disservice to that person who spent so much time tying that lore into their character because I just thought it looked cool.
That is a great point, too. I think what a lot of people forget is the reason why people who get ripped off are so sensitive to it is because they have put so much effort into coming up with those ideas. And when it gets ripped off, it only takes that person who ripped it off like a few minutes. And the fact that all your hard work just got copied and pasted onto another character and everyone's complimenting that character and there's no like credit to you, it's like, wow, okay, thanks a lot. I feel, very appreciated over here.
Yeah.
It makes you not want to upload anything after that.
Yeah.
Not to mention, especially for artists who have things like commissions open, like if you're copying something from them, like even just their style, it can hurt like their own ability to kind of sell their works because people are looking at yours and they're looking at theirs and like comparing the two, and that doesn't always happen, but it's something to keep in mind.
I think... continue, sorry.
I was just going to say, and that's not flattering.
Yeah.
I read some of the stuff we're mentioning is from a journal as well that was recently uploaded. Irony and timing. But we'll feature it later, too. I need to ask the artist if they're okay with it. But with inspiration, like... where was I going? Basically, like, if you are inspired, and as Razy has mentioned in the chat too, and you've got this detail, honestly, the way to avoid copying is when you're inspired by that thing, don't look at it again. It is my suggestion until you've finished whatever yours is and you can compare and contrast, because if you have got that thing you're inspired by right next to you while you are working on your stuff, you are way more likely to rip off or copy as a result.
Yeah, it becomes a reference.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to be using people's creative details as a reference unless it's like something that's canon, like say the ruffles of the for the third uniform exorcist, like the pink ones. 3 of the exorcists have a skirt pink ruffle thing. I mean, 2 of them have it on the side. You can't copyright that. But if it's something fancy like someone did a multi-layered skirt that is designed in a way that hasn't been seen before, like, it'd be really kind of distasteful of you to rip that off and put it on your character without even asking the artist beforehand to boot. And as I got a little off track, but as Razy said, the safest route is to ask the artist.
For sure. And, if you do ask somebody and they say that, it's a little bit too close to their character and they're not comfortable with it, chances are they might be willing to work with you to figure out a middle ground between something that you want to do, but something that's not going to be too close to their character, and your character will be so much stronger for it in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, I've worked with people before too, and their characters weren't even any way similar to my character, and they're like, "Hey, I noticed this, just in case," and we ended up pitching ideas and brainstorming, and they ended up happier with their character because I had another perspective to help with. But Flo just mentioned as well, and I quote, "A lot of times people just want to be noticed and become popular in a fandom. So if they see a character that is popular, they will try to take those attributes in order to make their own thing popular." And one thing all of the hosts have discussed in regards to that is that, yeah, you can take those attributes and possibly become more popular, but at the same time, your character will always be viewed as like a second hand of the original. And that's not flattering.
Yeah, that'll actually do your reputation even worse than being completely brand spanking new to the fandom and nobody even knows you exist. Especially if, you're ripping off a character that we all, know and enjoy. We see you trying to, rip them off, and we'll be like, okay, that person isn't someone that we want to associate with, because if they do it to one person, who's to say they're not going to do it to others?
Yeah, and this is, one thing I'd like to mention on this, especially, is that is a problem. This happens. If you have copied someone before and you've done it more than once, or it's just been a reoccurring problem, like, a lot of fans talk to each other, and it's really sad, but you may end up being viewed as someone that copies others, and they may start avoiding you. And I do want to mention that if that does happen, you can talk to someone and figure out how to fix it. And I mean, we would all be open to listening to that, because I really don't want people to feel like they're damned if they make one mistake, even if it's a large mistake.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, a lot of emotions are piling high. It's very controversial, and people get hurt very easily over it. But I definitely don't want people to feel like they're screwed for the rest of their lives if they fuck up once. I don't want that to be the kind of community we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not a nice kind of feeling, because everyone gets tense because it's over just one small thing, when actually bridging that gap and communicating with each other actually would be better for everybody.
Yeah. And I guess one thing just to think about, and what a lot of people said on the post as well, is be understanding. Like, if someone comes to you and they're really pissed off and really hurt because they feel like you've ripped them off, try to be understanding to them, because their emotions are high and they may be reacting like a trigger, and just voice to them that, okay, you understand they're really upset and you're willing to work this out. And if they continue to be an asshole to you, I mean, that may become a bigger issue, but usually most of the people I've met, at least in our fandom, are pretty understanding, and once you actually show yourself to be a mature person, they'll usually mature back. If they're not, always kind of give a shout out to someone like, hey, I'm having an issue, I don't know how to solve this, and maybe we can help out. But yeah.
On your notes,
just don't judge too quickly if someone gets angry fast.
Well, and on that note too, if someone does come to you, you can go to someone else that like a friend who will be honest with you and say, hey, this person pointed out this thing, do you agree with them?
Yeah,
and same too for going to someone else, is asking if you're overreacting on a detail. Go ahead, Chi. I completely cut you off.
Yeah, exactly that though, because again, a lot of us are admittedly oversensitive to it. I know I've been working not to be oversensitive to it and trying to keep a more open mind. But as Razy just said too, making mistakes is what all of us do. Just be honest about it, please. Because when you lie and you continue to make excuses, it paints you in a really bad picture.
Yeah, and like I actually really admire people who have the guts to come up and say, look, I fucked up.
Yeah,
because it takes a lot of courage to face not only one person but an entire community and say, look, I'm sorry that this has happened. What can we do to work towards a solution? And it takes a lot to do that, but I actually just admire people who do it, because it's honestly the better thing to do.
People are going to trust you far more if you're honest rather than if you're lying.
And it just helps out the fandom in general. Like, if we're constantly having to kind of look over one another, it just creates a toxic environment. But if people are like open and honest about it, like Ray and Chia and everyone else are mentioning, then it just brings the fandom closer together, I guess.
And as Rayzy's mentioning too, again, she's giving all these great comments. She says there are people who don't give second chances to people, which is understandable in a way, because people who've experienced a lot are probably not gonna be as forgiving. But as she says, I think our fandom is pretty understandable and mature on the topic, because if you wanted someone to give you a second chance for a fuck up or mistake you did, then you should give someone else a second chance, is kind of my saying. Treat others how you want to be treated. I mean, that's like the oldest quote in the book.
Yeah.
Well, the world would be a better place if everybody followed it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people are scared at first, but again, like the way a healthy environment thrives is through communication, and we have emphasized that over and over and over again. And as long as you're willing to be honest and communicative, people should be honest and communicative back to you. And if they're not, they're assholes. But again, we're trying to make a positive and growing environment. So let's try to work towards that instead of, clamping down and just not giving anyone a chance or being non-communicative and judging from like corners and rallying up people. Like that's fucking ridiculous, man.
Well, especially too, since like I know at least when I joined the fandom, there was a lot of stuff going on with like Mary Sue blogs, and it made me very hesitant to actually like become an active part of the community. We don't want new people joining the community to show up with these issues like ripping off and Mary Sue blogs and whatnot. Like, not saying that these videos are going to totally like dispel all of these negative things, but if there's something that we can do about it to make the fandom a more positive place, isn't it kind of our responsibility to?
Yeah, because you can't just sit there and say, oh, I wish this fandom was so much friendlier, and sit on your ass and do nothing.
Yeah,
You gotta speak out. You gotta talk about it. I mean, y'all know I'm always making journals about this stuff.
Yeah.
No one's gonna talk about it unless someone does. It doesn't happen.
The toxicity will only thrive on our inaction as a community.
And I mean, it can be really scary going to someone and being like, hey, I think you might have ripped me off, or hey, I think I might have ripped you off. It's scary. I mean, I've had troubles contacting people before myself because I don't want to make them so upset, or I don't want to make them cry, or I don't want to make them do, just feel like shit, because that makes me feel like shit. I don't want to hurt them. So, it's just, it all stems from understanding and communication. And always remember to apologize, as Ariri just said. And, go on, because I'm rambling.
I was just gonna throw out there that apologizing's like freaking hard. Like, I know that I have major issues with it. Just saying I'm sorry is, I don't know why, it can just be so hard, especially if you don't know if the other person is, gonna be like, it's fine, or if they're gonna, get up all in your grill about it. But I think for the most part, like, I think it was Razy said earlier, like, we're pretty, accepting fandom, and we don't want drama. We've had drama. We don't want it to come back. So.
Retired old farts, as Chico always says.
Well, and I think I'm the oldest out of all 4 of us here, too, so.
Wait, how old are you?
21
Wait,
and
you want
almost
to put
4
that
months.
in the video? I guess you do.
Well, it's not like I'm 15 or anything. Like, if
Yeah,
anyone
wait.
tries to be creepy, then,
Wait, what month? Because I thought I was the oldest.
Beginning of December.
I'm September.
Oh. Well then.
And multiple people are mentioning in the chat too, attacking, never attack someone. Try to avoid it as much as possible, because attacking them doesn't make you a better person, even if you're really angry. It's the opposite of trying to make a peaceful solution.
Yeah, and if you do go make the peaceful solution in the end, it's only going to make that harder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, if you notice someone and you think they're ripping you off, ask them, instead of saying, "Oh my God, you fucking ripped me off, you asshole," that's not gonna do anything but piss them off too. It's better to go up and say, "Okay, I don't mean to be aggressive or rude, but I've noticed some similarities between our characters, and if you would be open to it, I'd like to discuss it and possibly figure out a way to like differentiate our characters more. Always seek a compromise or a peaceful solution to what's going on, and people will respond much better to that."
And especially if you're the one contacting the person first, try and keep in mind that it actually doesn't always have to be a case where they are copying you or ripping you off. People can sometimes come to similar conceptions about a character completely on their own. So it doesn't always entail that they've been looking at your stuff.
Yeah,
That has been a case in the past, but
coincidences do happen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're very, very common, but they do happen, and it's important to keep that in the back of your mind. Sometimes people can't prove it's a coincidence either, and that is a really sucky situation. My suggestion is, if you feel very strongly, about that it's a coincidence for you, try to figure out if you can compromise with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, weigh the pros and cons. Is that detail really that important? Can you change it in some manner to make it different? Can you expand on it and realize, oh, it's actually a different detail than this person's?
Mm.
And as Ariri just said too, and a lot of other people were saying again on the polls, is keep it private, please. Note the person, as we've been saying, notes, notes, notes. Because the moment you bring this kind of thing into comments, they're on a public forum, which means everyone is seeing it, everyone can comment on it, and that makes the tension so much higher in the conversation you're having with this person, because not only are they trying to juggle with how to respond to you, but they're trying to juggle with how people are viewing their response. Now that's a lot of stress.
Yeah, and some of the artists' friends who made the call-out journal might take it into their own hands to approach the quote-unquote copier, because, you know, there are people out there, which I've seen, you know, constantly with DeviantArt drama. As soon as, you know, there's a call-out journal posted, there's someone else who's not involved who decides that they want to be involved and goes and stirs more shit.
And that's how death threats happen too.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen people get death threats over that kind of stuff. Someone posts a call-out journal, and then like 5 of their friends jump on this person's profile, and they're leaving these really rude comments, like, "I hope you get run over by a bus," smiley face. Like, that's you are not a good person for doing that. You are not defending your friend. You're making your friend look like an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but anyone viewing this drama doesn't get the whole story. Whether the argument started in comments or went from notes to comments, which I hope that doesn't happen, but I'm sure it does. Anyone, looking at that doesn't get the full story, so they're not going to have the same context as the other two sides. And then, you know, if one person starts doing call-out journals, then, you know, they're only showing their side of the story. So then when people start attacking that other person, they don't get to hear that other person's side. And sometimes, well, most of the time, they don't even care to hear the other person's side. So it's just far less messy to keep it private for as long as you possibly
if you don't care about the other side when you make that call-out journal, you are nothing more than a bully. Because you are making that journal with the full knowledge that you are bringing negative attention to that person and spreading negative attention of them and making them at risk for people attacking them. That is bullying behavior.
Yeah.
And slander.
Yeah, slander too. I mean, in Britain, slander's a really bad thing. You could actually get sued for it.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, I mean, you can have freedom of speech in America, but that doesn't mean people aren't going to call you an asshole if you're being an actual asshole about it.
You know, there's a moral boundary to, you know, free speech. You know, yes, you can say anything, but does that mean you should?
Exactly.
Yeah, I heard somewhere that, like, freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences for your speech. So, yeah, if you're going to say something really rude, then you're not going to be safe from people, you know, pointing out that it is rude.
Right? Yeah. And I'm going to stick to the call-out journals, but there's another thing that Lou mentioned that I want to mention. But as a lot of you know, I won't go into very specific details because it's over, but we had an incident a while back, and basically we could not find a compromise with the other person. There was this huge shitstorm, and as a result, both sides were posting sort of a call-out journal. Like, I actually posted a call-out journal. I didn't mention any names, but I was linking to the conversations to show everyone the context and what was going on. And I still say that it is best to avoid call-out journals. But I think if it's becoming a community problem and it is not getting fixed and you are outnumbered by so many people, I think it's okay to get a whole bunch of friends and be like, look, this is going on. We're trying to figure out how to fix the situation, and getting help from them. That's okay, as long as everyone's being mature and looking for a peaceful solution rather than just blowing it up even more.
On that note, too, though, if you are trying to get some support from friends, I'd say still keep it private for as long as you can before doing journals like that. If I remember, several of us coordinated privately on that issue, and I think that definitely helped get a lot more done, though not as much got done as I would have liked, but that still helped a lot more than had like one or two people decided to do call-out journals by themselves, because that would not have been nearly as effective.
Yeah, and again, like, if you do get in a situation like that where you need community help, don't have it where a whole bunch of people are posting very specific call-out journals. That's a way to spread more rage than it is to spread, hey, we need help with this.
Yeah.
Also, again, as Chica mentioned, we were coordinating in private chat, like, should we respond to this person? Who needs to respond to this person? Because when you find yourself in a flame war, whatever it be, in a public forum, and you send like 5 friends to respond to that one comment, that looks really bad. Like, that does not look very mature of you at all. But, I mean, I guess we're kind of moving into rage and flame territory. We need to get back to the copying.
Which does inspire rage and flame. But
yeah. And I don't think I've really, at least not in this community, I've seen any war that started out of a copying incident. Usually people try to keep it as more of a private issue. But, I mean, not to say that it hasn't happened before. But yeah, what did Lou mention earlier? Oh yes, the coincidences thing. When you're getting really angry at someone and you're noting them, please remember that they may not even know. Like, they may not have even noticed those similarities. It could be completely unintentional. And honestly, quite a lot of the time it is. Whether because the person isn't aware what constitutes as a ripoff or copy, or they just weren't paying that much attention and realized, oh wow, our characters are really alike.
Well, and then too, keep in mind that if you are going to note somebody, for you, it might be an issue that's, been building up and bugging you for a long time. For them, it's going to be out of the blue to be receiving a note from somebody who they may or may not have spoken to before. So just keep that in mind, because for a lot of people, seeing a note from somebody randomly like that can be really scary.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine you getting one. Like, you're having a great day and you're chatting with friends, and out of nowhere you get this note. It's like, hey, I think you might have ripped me off. It's like, holy shit! Oh my god, what did I do? You're freaking out. You're panicking. And I think a big suggestion on if you ever do find yourself in that kind of situation and someone's noted you is take a moment to, like, calm yourself down and message them back, like, I really want to talk this over because I was not aware of this, and maybe we can work something out.
Right.
So don't just, like, freak out and start deleting all of your stuff and going haywire and writing a really big apology journal. Like, you don't have to do all that. It's better to work it out.
Take a moment and, to just stop and don't look at it, and just maybe talk to someone else and say, look, someone's come to me with this issue, I'm freaking out, just can you chill with me a second and let's rationalize what's going on together before responding, because you don't want to respond and then come off like a complete asshole, because that's just going to look more incriminating, unfortunately, when really you're just upset yourself, and, which is completely understandable when someone just comes out and be like, oh, you're copying. It's these natural reactions that we can't help. We can't help feeling angry and upset when people come to us like this, but we have to respond with the same courtesy that has been given to us in being approached, or at least we hope that and the theoretical courtesy. And so yeah, just don't do anything immediately. Don't be drastic.
What were you saying, Sissy?
Oh, sorry. And as far as, like, reaching out to another person goes, if you feel like you aren't in a place where you're able to respond without your emotions coming through, it's okay to, like, ask the person to read over what you intend to respond with. Like, editing is helpful, especially if you don't think that you're able to, like, work through it on your own.
Because, I mean, not everyone knows how to deal with a situation like this. They don't know how to word things. They haven't had experience with it. And that's something I try to remember, too, personally. Like, if I'm in a conversation with someone and I'm sitting there like, that wasn't very smart to say, I try to remember, like, not everyone knows how to communicate those kinds of things.
And it can be very difficult because, it's a kind of situation where the wrong word or the wrong phrase can have different implications and not necessarily the ones you want.
Right. And especially for the D.Gray-Man fandom, it's sometimes important to keep in mind that, like, we have an amazingly diverse fandom, which means we have a lot of people who don't necessarily have English as their first language if you're communicating, like, in these notes through English.
Yes.
Keep in mind what language barriers are between you guys, if there is one.
Yeah, because it's really hard to say, like, definitely keep it in mind. Not everyone has had experience with, like, having a friend that English is not their first language. My best advice is to read over the sentences they've sent you and imagine how it would sound in a positive light. Don't automatically think the worst of them, because that is when an unnecessary shitstorm will happen. And I mean, maybe they do mean to be rude, but even so, if you respond to it in a mature manner and you seek to pacify the situation, you won't have a drama fest on your hands.
Yeah. Well, and then keep in mind too, like you'd mentioned that we have a lot of diversity in the group. A lot of us, like I know that me personally, are terrified of conflict. I would rather go jump into the deep end of a cold pool than deal with an argument. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people like that. Not everyone else would be totally up for, you know, a big debate like that. So keeping your wording as diplomatic and non-confrontational as possible will probably do the other person a lot of favors too. Like whether you're angry at them or not, freaking them out on purpose is not going to help anything.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they're not calming down, they're still being an asshole to you. It's better not to be an asshole back, even so. Like, I know I'm definitely prone to getting sassy with people when they're not listening to reason or they're not being mature about it and they just want to have a fight. But if you're in a situation where they clearly just want to have a fight, it might be better just to say, "Welp, whatever then," and not contacting them again. If the problems continue, though, that's when it gets into an interesting area. I think if it's a continuing problem, still trying to fix it is a good idea. But, I mean, there comes a point where it's like, what can you do? And that's another thing, like, if y'all got feedback on that, I mean, there are so many situations that can happen that a lot of people still don't know what to do. Usually when someone's faced with, like, someone who's not listening to them and they're just being an asshole and they're even posting journals about this person, like, this person called me a ripoff or whatever, that's kind of a situation where you need your friends to back you up, as long as your friends are also being mature about it. I really don't like rallying up people to, like, make someone do something.
Yeah.
But if it's for the sake of keeping the community peaceful, I mean, wars happen. What are you going to do, man? I mean, wars happen, they suck, but they happen for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, Ari's mentioning use emoticons, because when you don't use emoticons, they can't tell as easily if you're being calm about it. Like, even if you're not happy, you know, trying to keep that other person realizing you're still open for discussion and trying to convince them to be comfortable enough to talk to you. I mean, that's going to get you way farther than remaining, you know, without emoticons and all serious, because that might be freaking them the fuck out, man. They're like getting really scared.
Yeah, syntax and emoticons go a long way to helping, because if you use really strict or harsh wording and no emoticons, and that even just scanning over the note immediately sets off alarm bells.
Yeah, and I feel like, too, like, on another part, is when people get messaged about their character possibly being a ripoff or a copy, the automatic assumption is that they have to completely revamp that character, and I want to kind of destroy that notion, because at least I know in our community, usually when someone notes you about that, it's more like, these few details caught my attention, and if we could spin them to be more individualistic to your character rather than looking like my characters, we're all set. You know, like, sometimes you do have to change details, but not a lot of times you have to change your entire character, because, I mean, I don't think I've seen a case that serious before. Because, I mean, there's your informational stuff and then there's your visual stuff, but that's kind of another tangent.
Well, and I'd say too on changing stuff like that, no real person likes the same things for their whole life or is into the same hobbies for the whole time. So if you do end up having to change a detail like that, it's not really life or death, and nobody's saying that you have to completely scrap it. For example, if your character likes something involving water and somebody else points it out, you don't have to completely scrap that from their character. Maybe there's just a different direction you can take it so that it's still involved, but it's like peripherally so and not so blatant.
Yeah, and I think maybe this would be a good spot to kind of open up like what characteristics are kind of silly to call out as copying and which ones are more serious, I guess.
Sounds good.
Again, like, we'll try to be very specific, but, like, I know one thing that definitely always gets me is, like, if someone's like, oh, your character's hair is this and this color, or, oh, your character likes reading just like mine, that's a problem. Like, no. I think 75% of DGM characters like reading, so... But, like, that kind of stuff is kind of ridiculous. Again, you need to, like, try to figure out what details are small details to your character and which are medium and large. And again, I know Vu posted a really good comment on our poll about the amount of similarities. Like, having a few similarities that are small is one thing, but when all those similarities start piling up into medium and larger, that's when a problem starts to show up.
Yeah. Especially if it's like things that are immediately recognizable.
Yeah.
If it's something that you only know about if you read through the bio, then it's definitely still a problem. It's not as immediate as certain appearance aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, and Flo has mentioned the issue on innocence, and Kodo's mentioning clothing. And just a shout out to Bun, who posted a really great comment about copying regarding clothing, is that yes, the DGM characters have uniforms, but they also have casuals, and there's styles of clothing that are just really common, and you can't claim copyright to like shorts. That's ridiculous. What? What do you like? My character has shorts and undershorts, and sometimes I've seen like styles of undershorts, underskirts and stuff. It's like, fine, that's a-okay. I mean, it doesn't look like my characters. Why should I care?
But like, there's so many kind of like everyone thinks, oh, it's Victorian, let's put a waistcoat on it, and so you know, there's hundreds of characters that wear a waistcoat. What you can do is, you know, find a way to make it yours by perhaps looking up some Victorian clothing. I'd really recommend not going via Google, because what you get with Google, especially if you're doing you'll get stuff like fancy dress, and if like it's stuff with like waistcoats, you'll get modern designs as well, which, you know, fair enough if you want, but if you want kind of more period accurate, you know, fancy dress is not period accurate. Just no.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's usually really easy to tell if a clothing detail has been ripped off, because a lot of people who see like those common designs will try to make them unique to them. And if you see a character that pops up with those very particular, smaller, unique details to make that thing different, it's like, well, thanks a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
And it really hurts when you put all that time into it and someone's just like, oh, I like that, I'm going to use it. Like, couldn't you have asked me beforehand?
Yeah.
It's even worse, too, if you specifically say in the description, please don't use this, and then somebody says, oh, I want to do this anyway. It's like, no!
Yeah. Like, I've seen a couple times people go, oh, yeah, like, just after someone's gone, please don't do this, you know, I don't want it to become a trend, and then someone goes, oh, yeah, I want to do this, and it's just like, can you not? Like,
the trend thing is definitely an issue too. Like,
we
have a lot of positive trends, but we also have a few negative trends that have been happening.
And like, if someone says, "I don't want anyone else to do this," please, can you not? If you respect me, please don't. Yeah. And even if you want to do it, just don't mention it. Like, you know, that we all want to do cool things.
Yeah.
If someone's uncomfortable with you doing the same thing, then just keep it to yourself, and you know, just don't, you know, you don't need to say it, because then that just makes that person who said don't do it
Guilt
really
trip.
annoyed, because
Yeah, annoyed or guilt trip.
yeah, because you know they've just said something very clearly, you know,
Yeah.
and you've just gone against it, and it's just like, you know, especially when it's coming from, you know, watchers and friends,
Yeah.
and it's just like,
Worse.
you know, where is your respect for that?
I think one thing too, like to put it in perspective of trends, is we have, it's kind of been a really old thing, but like the trend to make your character an AU Noah. Like that's a really positive and fun trend. Like everyone loves doing that. Modern AUs, so forth. But like where you get a trend when it comes to a design aspect, it starts to get a little more shaky. Like I think a positive trend, for instance, is like what's being talked about in the chat right now is fluffy hair.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of characters with fluffy hair. My main DGM character has really fluffy hair. Now the cool thing about it though is that a lot of these characters have stylized said fluffy hair in a manner that's really unique to their character, or is different from all the others. And that's kind of really cool trend, because it's like, how creative can you make it? But I think where it starts to get into the negatives again is like you design something like the Innocents, for instance, to have a particular method or way it works or theme, and suddenly 2 or 3 other characters pop up with the same thing, and suddenly your character is no longer unique because everyone else is doing it, and that's when it becomes a cliche, because it became a trend. And that's kind of the point where it's not very respectful to the original content, because you've basically just said, wow, your trait is really unique, I want to use it. And then everyone starts doing it. And you see your character everywhere, and then you feel like bashing your head against a wall.
Well, and I'd like to throw out, too, that this goes beyond just D-Gram OCs. Whether you apply it to D-Gram OC or to any other OCs, you can see something that you like in like a persona or an original character or a fan character for something else, and if you decide to take that and use it in your own way, it's still very disrespectful.
Yeah, especially when you watch that person, like, the hugest thing I've noticed too is like when someone is ripped off and they notice that person watches them and has been faving their content and suddenly starts uploading characters just like theirs, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
And
I think that's definitely where that person needs to, like, the person who's drawn inspiration / copying / other, that they need to take the break. You know, they've had their fave run and left comments appropriately, and then they need to step back, take a break, look at some other stuff, go watch a show, listen to music, look at other art, whatever. Go out for a run. I find, for me at least, going out for a walk and, you know, listening to some music really helps me.
I just take a nap. But
I usually have a bad habit of waiting multiple days, in fact, because I want it completely out of my mind, and then I want to look at my piece with new eyes.
Yeah.
In the hopes that I'll see something different, or like even errors.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, if there's a detail you really, really like, and you want to use it, message the artist and be like, I would really like to use this, but I realize it's unique to you and I'd like to ask permission first. And if they're not okay with it, maybe you can figure out a way to make that detail different even with their feedback. Like, well, how do you think I could make this different so that it wouldn't be a rip-off? Or try to figure it out on your own, it depends. But again, respect that artist if they say, I really would not be comfortable with you doing that. Because especially artists who have been ripped off repeatedly, it's really hurtful to them, and they're already like salting about it as is, and you making it more stressful for them probably isn't a good idea.
Right. And if they are okay with it, please, please, please remember to credit them, like with the original concept. Even link back to their original art.
This would be a good spot for courtesy crediting.
Well, and I'd say too, like if you get an idea from a conversation, it, you know, is not that hard to say, hey, yeah, I was talking with so-and-so and got this idea, because then, it again reinforces the fact that you're actually a part of the community and not doing these things in a vacuum.
Yeah, because, and kind of what we've termed it, I don't actually know if this is an official term. I just kind of rolled with it because it came up in my head, but what we basically call it is courtesy crediting. And this particular type of crediting is when you see an idea, like a theme in an artwork you really like, and when you use that idea, if it's not different enough, you should contact the artist. But if it's different enough, you add a little shout out in the artist description, like, hey, I saw so-and-so's artwork was really inspired. Just link to them. And at least that way the artist sees, hey, that person was inspired by me, and that's really cool. And they also credited me, so it doesn't look like they're claiming it as their own.
Right.
And you never know, they might get watches and saves and comments from you linking them and crediting them, because the person looking at your art will go, oh, let's, trace it back, let's have a look at where they got their inspiration from.
And it does not cheapen your art to courtesy credit it. I mean, people don't look at that and say, oh, wow, they didn't come up with it themselves. No, they go, wow, that's a really cool interpretation of it, and they check out the other artist. And the positives are, you have made a friend of that artist, or at least made them more comfortable around you. And two, if it was found out that you actually ripped them off or whatever, it'd be far worse being called out for ripped off over it than it would be to credit it.
Yeah.
Because then you're definitely viewed as, like, this person that rips people off. And that's a terrible thing. Like, you don't want to be viewed as that.
Especially not in such a small community as ours.
Yeah.
Where, like, everybody talks.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, and again, like, some people aren't going to remember that they got this and this idea from someone else. And that's understandable. But just try to be aware and try to be thoughtful of others. Like, do your research too if you have to.
Yeah.
Like, I think I may have gotten this detail from someone else. That's the point where you start looking through the people you watch. But
The power of research is unparalleled.
And it kind of shows too, like, things look really good when you actually research them and they look really unique. If you kind of just slap something together without looking at outside resources, not saying it's bad just based on your imagination, it just looks usually more genuine when you have other resources.
Yeah, and I would like to mention something too. I posted a journal a while back about copycats in the DDM fandom and how to avoid it, and I've kind of realized now that the method I mentioned works for me but doesn't so much work for others. Basically, the method that I personally use is I have an idea, I think it's unique to me, I write it down real quick, and then I browse a whole bunch of DeviantArt characters, or DeviantArt DGM characters, and I try to see, okay, has anyone done this before? And then I flesh it out, and so forth. But what I found out recently is that doesn't work for everyone, and that it would be easier for them to, like, write down their idea and then flesh it out. Not completely, just enough to get your basic idea, what your themes are, and then you look at other DGM characters, so you can compare and contrast and make sure yours isn't too similar to someone else's. And if it is, you're still in work in progress mode, so it's easy to fix. Right. So a way to avoid, accidentally or intentionally copying or ripping someone off.
I'd like to mention a different way of doing it, but I just realized that, like, I do pretty much the same thing. Like, you get an idea for a weapon or for its inactive form, and you look through DA for it. And don't just check, like, DGM OC. I'd say look at DGM OC, DGM FC, D.Gray-Man OC, D.Gray-Man FC, D.Gray-Man fan character. Like, there's so many different tags that people use that if you only look at one of them, you might think that you have an original idea, but then lo and behold, there's someone else hiding in one of those obscure tags somewhere that sees your work and thinks that you got it from them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a case where it was a coincidence. As most of y'all know, and as I said in the intro video, I started out on fanfiction.net, and I was writing a fanfiction for my main DGM character. And in the fanfiction, I had detailed all her attack moves to a point, like, very, very detailed, already mentioned in the chapters. Well, like 3 years later, man, I get on DeviantArt, I'm looking through all these really cool DGM characters, and I find this DGM character from 2009 who had, like, legit, almost the exact, like, arm design for, like, the black markings on their arm that I had written for my character, and I had this ultimate moment of, oh my god, I fucked up! At the same time, I realized this was a legitimate coincidence, but even though that OC is no longer active, since I've noticed that character, I have slowly started to, like, add different details to the design I'd originally had, because I recognize, well, this person had it, and even though I came up with it first, it's not going to hurt if I change mine a little more so they don't look exactly the same.
Well,
so that's something to think about.
Well, and plus you never know where people get their inspiration from. There are so many really cool fighting shows out there, action movies, fantasy things that have attacks that you might be totally into and want to create a character with the same style of fighting. And if you run across someone else who has a fan character who has that same fighting style, they didn't necessarily get it from you. They could have gotten it from roughly the same place that you did, if not exactly the same place. Like, if somebody were to, for example, watch Ruby and be inspired by her fighting style, then that would, you know, frick, where was I going with that? You know, it would give them some credit that they got inspiration from elsewhere and not from, say, Kira.
Yeah, that's my main character for those who are viewing later and don't know us. One of the things, like, I've noticed too is, again, I'm not gonna, like, mention specific incidences. This is just gonna be really general. Is when you're providing people with, like, templates and things, and you're like, hey, yeah, just look at my character's template, and you can use that. It might be better to make an actual empty separate template, because I have found that people are more inclined to accidentally rip off and copy and end up paraphrasing you when they are looking over your material to build their character profiles. And that is something to think about if you're building a character profile or you're filling one out and you've got another one right next to you that doesn't belong to you. It is so easy to accidentally paraphrase or copy or rip off that way.
Well, especially too if, for example, your character is still in the works, so you're not set on the weapon or whatever, and then, you know, you're looking over someone else's template and you see wording and you're like, oh, that's really cool, I might go with that instead of what I was already thinking. It might be completely subconscious, but sometimes it's something as little as that leads to, you know, a big issue.
Yeah.
So, you know. It's not always completely intentional. In fact, a lot of times it's something so small as I really like that eventually leads to, you know, things like this, where it's a big enough issue that we need to, like, have a legit talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's some other stuff that we had on our list?
In fact, that's probably the most frustrating part, is that it's not it's not done in ill nature.
Yeah, because I know, like, again, as I mentioned before, I'm actually more like freaked out and stressed and actually noting the person than I am over the actual copying thing. So it's like, I don't want to upset this person. I don't want to ruin their day, you know? It's just one of those things where you have to figure out a way to word it and try to be respectful of others. I mean, there are people that are going to be more sensitive to really small details, like bangs, for instance. Like, someone could have a really unique style of bangs, and then someone ends up using a style that looks like that, or is exact, or looks slightly similar, and the original person is going to be like, no! You know, but someone else might be like, that's fine. I mean, bangs. How much can you do? It just really depends. I think my best advice, too, on looking if someone has ripped you off is if you see a single detail, if there's multiple ones with that, even if it's a small one, like, let's say the hair looks very similar, like maybe it's got the same part or the same length, And then the uniform looks very similar as well.
Yeah.
You know, that might be something to think about. By that point, what I would do is look at the bio, and if there's more similarities, there might be a concern. But again, some people aren't bothered by that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not bothered by, for instance, sleeveless characters. I mean, there's lots of sleeveless characters. Who gives a shit? But if someone took Kira's skin tight shoulder part and her armband, and had sleeveless, and had undershorts with the folded shorts, then I'd be like, well. Because that's kind of a wonky design, and I made it purposefully like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I mean, are there any like similarities y'all can think of that you wouldn't be bothered by at all personally?
I think I agree on sleeveless uniforms aren't that big of an issue because, like, I know that I gave Adelphi sleeveless for the same reason that Lena Lee gets a miniskirt, was for the innocence. Trying to think what else.
Claude 9 had a sleeveless uniform, either her first or her second. It's still really hard to tell by the design.
Definitely the second, I think, because I think that's kind of where I got, where I was reassured that, yeah, this is okay if you do this. They're not going to, burn her at the stake.
That's kind of another thing, too. Like, if it's in canon, it's kind of hard to just claim it for your character.
Yeah.
Because people would see it in canon and be like, oh, I like that. I'll put it on my character,
Well, and on that note, too, like, really dressy-looking uniforms are like, really cool to see, too, because, we see them in canon, but a lot of folks don't choose to use them because, fighting in pants is a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah.
Even so, when you do see a dress one, it's kind of really cool.
Yeah.
And, like, I guess one thing that doesn't bother me is as far as, like, equipment type innocences go, I don't get bothered if you have a lot of Exorcist OCs pop up that have, like, a necklace as their innocence, or, like, bracelets or bangles and stuff.
Oh, wings!
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Wings.
Yeah.
But,
I
like,
think another thing to keep in mind, too, is, like, if your uniform concept, you haven't posted it yet, is really similar to someone else's, or they have a design that's unique to someone else's, message them like, I was thinking of the design and I realized it's really damn similar to your characters. Do you mind if I use it? Or should I tweak it more? It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
If anything, it reassures that you're not, in a situation where someone's like, well, what the fuck? You ripped off this character,
Yeah.
Which just makes it awkward for everybody.
I'm trying to think of, like, a few other things that are kind of, like, why would you mention that as a ripoff? But, color palettes, kind of to a point.
Yeah.
I think it depends, again, on the color palette. Like, I remember when I was making Kira and, like, drawing her more often, there were a few people who wanted to do Cherokee color palette characters with blue eyes. And I remember one in particular by I Love Seychelles. I don't know how to pronounce it, but her nickname's Say. Yeah, Say. And she made a little girl named Olivia who had, like, almost similar tones, but her skin was, like, a golden brown, whereas Kira's was a reddish brown, and her hair was, like, a different shade of brown. I mean, there are so many ways to vary the colors ever so slightly, so at least it doesn't look exactly like the other character. But on the same token, it's like you get color palettes like a white character with blonde hair. There's so much blonde hues you can choose before, you end up having someone else.
When I was making Fee, I was going to originally go much lighter, but then I thought there was a lot of quite yellowy and platinum blonde, so I kind of went for a slightly darker one. And then because she was from a hot country, I was like, well, she's got to have a tan, because, that happens. I don't think I see that a lot with, like, white characters who have a tan. I don't know if that's just me, but shrug.
I mean, I'm going to feature one of your artworks, Mojo, of Girl Squad, to kind of put it in perspective. Girl Squad is kind of a group of D.Gray-Man characters that that was organized by Mojo. Let me find it. But basically, like, it really kind of sets it into perspective, like how many various shades of brown and skin color you can have. I'm gonna do the meme because that's fucking hilarious. Here it is.
But yeah, because there's seven girls.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and
all
Penny
have
is not
brown
here, so
hair
7.
except for Josephine.
Yeah.
So
all the brown.
I mean, like, you've got 3 fully white characters there. They all have different skin tones. And even with the brown, you know, there's completely different shades of brown. Like, you can go anywhere with it, really.
Yeah.
Molly's supposed to be darker, but my last computer was such crap that it's horrible. I don't like it.
But yeah, I think one thing to still think about, you know, is especially with unusual color palettes you may see on a character, like if it's a color that's unnatural, like say a really, really dark purple with this really fancy sheen on it.
Yeah.
If you want a purple-haired character, and you see that character, I would possibly suggest like choosing a different purple tone because purple's pretty unique. I mean, and maybe a shout-out wouldn't hurt, especially if you were inspired by that character. It's really just one of those gray areas where you need to figure out like what's the most thoughtful direction you can take for this.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd say too that if you want to go with a really unique appearance, I'd say check out, like, I don't want to sound insensitive, but, you know, like physical abnormalities. Like when I gave Molly vitiligo, that was actually a lot of fun to research because it was like, oh, look, she doesn't have to fit exactly, you know, this appearance. I can have fun with it, and there's a lot of things out there like that. So
yeah, and I mean, scars is another thing.
Yeah.
Moles.
Yes.
People have moles, okay? I mean, you could have beauty mark moles, you could have moles anywhere on your body.
Yeah.
Sun kisses.
I mean, birthmarks. There's freckles. There's a variety of things you can do. I mean, freckles, you can have them on the face, or you can have them all over the place.
If you want to get really weird, you could even have like a port wine stain, which is like a birthmark, but it's red. It's dark red.
Yeah.
If you want to see an example, look up Gorbachev. Is it Gorbachev? It's the Russian leader. He just has it on his head. I just remember it from history, and I was just like, that is really. And like he was bald as well, and you could just see all of it. And I was just like, wow. But like, I think you know what it might sound weird to go, oh yeah, all these, you know, physical abnormalities, but then in reality, that's what it is. That's what the world is like, because there's so many different people with different backgrounds that they all have weird things, and maybe it sounds a little insulting, but to talk about it, but I don't really intend it to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is character design.
Yeah, we want to be inclusive of these people, of you know, because I know, like with, you know, some skin conditions and birthmarks, people can be really, you know, sensitive about it and have a lot of self-esteem issues. But if we, you know, make these characters that kind of reflect them, then maybe they'll feel a little more happy about it.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, not only that, especially with exorcists, they're risking their lives every day and getting injured almost every day.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get scars, they're going to get scuff marks. I mean, some of them might even get burn wounds.
Yeah,
Scars.
Hoshino depicts most of the cast with scars. I think the only people who don't have scars are the non-combatants, Lena Lee and Kanda. Lena Lee, I guess, because she's super cute, and plus, you know, she is wearing thigh-high boots, which would protect her legs the majority of the time, and Kanda heels. So.
And not only that, but, you know, I've seen a lot of recent fandom interpretations of those characters.
Oh, yeah.
Where people have figured out, okay, if they did have scars, where would we put them? Like, I've seen drawings of Lena Lee with really small scars on her legs that you don't really notice until you look up close. I've seen Lavi with burn scars.
The Pedals, I think it's Pedals, that's Peadles on Tumblr. They drew Lena Lee with burn marks. And I think also Lavi?
Yeah.
Oh no, but go check them out because their art is super cute.
Well, we have seen her appear in canon where she has bandages and stuff wrapped across her legs and her face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's really cool to, if you have something weird and wonky and physical, like in real life, seeing another character that has that's actually really cool. So it's really nice to see a lot of diversity with fan characters with any sort of these abnormalities and be like, hey, I have that too. I know what that's like. Because not only is there, a character representing you, but, if the creator is open to feedback, you can be like, so, if you want to ask me what it's like, then, you can ask me because I got
and
it.
not only that, but you're less likely to get ripped off.
Oh, yeah!
And if you are,
most people don't want to put those kind of details on their characters because, either they really associate with that character, like, I don't want to hurt my baby, I mean,
Yeah.
kind of situation where we're like, hey, I put this on my character. No one else is doing this,
and then if they do rip it off, it's painfully obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, Chi, you're still screen sharing, by the way.
Sorry. Such a dork.
Nerd!
Okay, but yeah. I should have, stayed on Mojo's thing instead of going to chat, but whatever.
Well, then you mentioned scars, too. There are different kinds of scars and different stories behind them. So.
One thing I definitely want to mention about scars is depending on your character's background, the scars are going to form differently. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this. I found out about it, 2 years ago when I was researching it for a character, but, there's keloided scars, and then there's,
yes, that's
scars.
what I was just going to say.
Yeah, so that's something to think about because, if your character is, for instance, black and has, really sunken scars that's kind of unusual, they usually tend to be raised. But...
and with keloids, they can grow, can't they?
Yeah.
Or, come back or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember Nezumi from number 6 has keloids on his back.
Yeah.
I just remembering things like that.
Well, and I'd like to throw out there, too, that skin actually does a very, very, very good job of healing. About a year ago, I kind of cut off a part of my finger at work, and it completely grew back. I kind of parted with a huge part of my toe in surgery, and most of it came back. So unless they don't take care of it, then chances are it might not scar as bad as if they, had medical attention for it and, took care of it every day, because our bodies really are incredible in that they heal. That said, I am totally a fan for, really big scars. I mean, just look at
Yeah, and Alyssa just commented, too, cross-shaped scars are pretty common, and not even just, the actual crystal stigmata. I can definitely agree because, I gave Kira a cross-shaped scar on her back, way back in 2010. And when I got on DeviantArt, I was like, oh, there's more people with these, damn it. But a lot of people actually do have, a really large scar on their character's back in particular. So, just one of those things that are really common you might want to kind of flip up.
But also, just something to remember is, you can scar from operation. I broke my wrist a really long time ago, had to have it rebroken, and I've actually got a scar on my wrist from where they were opening up my wrist. And probably if I'd taken care of it, I wouldn't still have it, but I actually quite like it. I think it's a cute scar. And that's just a little line on my wrist. And so you can have scars from operations and stuff like that. I mean, Victorian medicine was somewhat primitive compared to what we have now. So it might not be as neat as my own operation, but Yeah,
and I think another thing too that I know has happened before is when you have scars on the face, those are common as well. And I think one thing to think about if you want a scar on your character's face is to definitely look up other characters who have scars on their faces, because a lot of people have tried to make different shapes that aren't as common so that they avoid being similar to another character.
Yeah.
But I guess something to keep in mind is balancing out what's expected a lot of people are going to think of like a scar on the cheek, for instance,
Mm.
or like a scar even shaped like Alan's. Like
Right.
your scar shouldn't be shaped like Alan's. I correct myself. Like a lot of people are trying to figure out ways so that the scars are different or have some sort of shape or quality or even size, so that they're not similar to someone else.
Well, and I'd like
Yeah.
to throw out there too that if you have something like that on your face, you're going to be, like, depending on, how you feel about it, it's going to change your appearance of yourself. For example, if you have a guy who, like, has a small slash across his face, he might think it's cool because it makes him look more badass. And it might be the same for a girl, but if somebody wants to be more accepted by society or wants to be viewed as, desirable, scars are usually, things that people look at and turn away from, or they look at your face and the first thing they see is your scar, and that's the first impression they have of you. And that's going to change how you feel about yourself as well. So it affects the mentality.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
something to keep in mind too is like we're not condoning that behavior, like judging people for their scars.
Right.
What we are saying though is like
It happens.
it's going to affect your character development.
Mm.
Yeah.
Character's character development. Are they going to be sensitive to people looking at their face? Are they going to try to cover this scar? Are they going to flaunt it as a battle wound? Those are things to think about when you give your character a scar that is in a very obvious and often noticeable place.
Mm.
Especially if, like, they're a child when they get it.
Yeah.
Kids want to be accepted. Kids want to, be loved by everyone. And when they look up at somebody and first thing they see is pity, then, they're not going to be that happy of a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Not speaking about my own character at all, no.
Not at all.
I think like, are we still on ripoff? Does this count as ripoff? I mean, I guess it sort of does
I
because we're
think it
mentioning
does.
ways to differentiate, so you're not ripping off. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, bullshitting this so hard.
Well, this is actually something that I did want to bring up, so we actually segued into it rather nicely.
Yeah. We covered a few red flags, but I think we should definitely like open some dialogue on that. Like, what do y'all think are red flags that could signal someone's copying? Again, we mentioned before, like, you put the two next together and you actually mistake the characters because they look so light. We mentioned that before. Are there any other things that you can think of that when you see a character, what shows to you that, like, I don't know, you see a character and you're like, oh, wow, that looks like a quality I've seen before. Is that something you consider a ripoff, or is it something else?
Mm.
Because that's definitely, like, a controversial thing in the D.Gray-Man fandom is, like, noticeable characteristics that are shared amongst different characters.
Mm.
So, if y'all can think of any.
Well, on that note, like, the appearance of an innocence, that's one that's pretty recognizable, especially, like, in its deactivated form. If it's an everyday item, that's one thing, but if it's a specific marking, then,
Yeah.
it's a little suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And Ari's working off that. She mentions when a new character has a detail that's super uncommon that already belongs to another. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that before and thought, that looks very similar to someone else's. I want to expand a little on what Chica said, too, is, like, really common items. You can't claim the sword as only your own, for instance. Or you can't claim a necklace as only your own. I mean, the shape of the necklace can differ, the chain can differ, so that's something to think about if you're trying to be more diverse. But those are some things that are kind of stupid to say, no one can have this in any shape or form. Like, what? What?
Yeah.
Anyone can think that up. Sorry to break your bubble.
We still have yet to see a toilet plunger.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
disappointed in that. I've been for years.
Child of a plumber one day realizes that there's more to this plunger than meets the eye.
Okay,
It's
let's
gonna
see
be
what
a
else
crap
have people
character,
been
come on.
mentioning.
Dogs, please stop barking.
Not only it looks the same, but it works the same. Yeah, that's definitely usually a oh no sign. We've talked a lot about, this is from Flo, we've talked a lot about physical appearance, but there are also personality traits, their quirks and backstories that can be copied. And I do want to reference back to like what Lou mentioned on the poll again is like when all those things start piling up. I mean, yeah, it's a written bio and not a lot of people read written bios, but the people that do are going to notice.
Yeah, especially if it's something like, back then there were a lot of farmers, there were a lot of merchants. So something like that, if you do it in your own twist, then it shouldn't be as recognizable. Um, Things like the child of a priest, like, for example, an illegitimate child of a priest, maybe, royalty, stuff like that, are more likely to be unique to that specific character. So if you want to use a similar idea, then definitely make sure and do your research and make sure that you're not referencing that other existing character when you're working on your own.
Right.
Yeah, and there are some really common directions that backstories take that you should not be surprised get used. I know one I can mention is there's always been a sort of popularity in the priestess trope, where basically like the character was a priestess and it was found out she had innocence, and then she goes to the Black Order and probably gets paired up with Conda, but I might be a little biased on that cliche, but it seems to go that direction anyway. There are some things that are just really common in backstories, people getting killed by Akuma, a family getting massacred by Akuma. That's kind of a norm in DGM, unfortunately. So,
I guess as far as personality traits go, one way to definitely make sure that you aren't ripping off someone else's personality that they've had like listed in their biography, try and expand on those characteristics, especially if you have like a history section. Try and show that like if your character's impulsive, like detail a part in their story where they acted impulsively, and it might be in a specific manner. Like some people are impulsive to like protect another person, or they're impulsive to try new things.
This is one of the reasons why I really, really hate personality lists where they don't explain about anything.
Yeah, because I think it might have been mentioned in a previous video that if someone is quote-unquote nice, there are so many different ways a person can be nice. Are they like genuinely kind to other people? Are they only nice to strangers, and people who actually know them are like, no, they're not? Are they nice to animals and jerks to people? Like, there's so many ways you could take that just saying nice is severely unhelpful.
Right. And oftentimes when you're exploring that avenue, like your character will be so much more fleshed out than if you had just like, made a personality trait list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing to think about personalities, there are a lot of traits that are really common just in general. There are a lot of stubborn characters. Again, as we mentioned, like, how are they stubborn? If a bunch of personality traits, and like when you add them up, the main personality traits of that character you should think of, and then the minor, because the main ones are going to be what shapes your character, and then the minor are going to differentiate your character from other characters. So that's kind of something to think about. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of other Spitfire characters than Kira, for instance, but they have different temperaments, or they have different likes or dislikes, or they have different character traits. Like, maybe they're really nice to certain people, or maybe they're an asshole to everyone. Like, that's really different. Plus, with Stubborn or Spitfire. So just think about that if you feel like someone might have ripped you off, or if you're trying to create a character that's different. There's so many ways. And I mean, even if someone was, for instance, Kira's main points are Spitfire, stubborn, and a very logical thinker, like she's an observer, someone else could have that, but in a different manner. Like, they could expand on that, so it's in a different direction than like what Kira's going with. And that wouldn't be an issue, especially if you've got a whole bunch of quirks and things that are completely different.
Well, and I feel like it would be helpful, too, to imagine them in different situations. Like, your multiple OCs meme was actually really helpful in figuring out where each of the different characters with different personalities, like, where their thoughts are on certain things. For example, their opinions of Akuma and the Noah. If you, for example, completed that meme, and then you want to create a character with this one personality, if you look at other people who have answered those same questions, make sure that your character's answers are going to be different from that person's. Like, if they're stubborn and, for example, a complete asshole, you want them to be a different stubborn and asshole than, say, than any other character you'd find. So I'm just going off what Ari said here in the chat, that we need more asshole characters. I'm trying to tie that in, and I feel like I kind of flopped. But you get what I was saying.
Do love
I mean,
some
like, a lot of
asshole
this stuff, too, with rip-off and copying, it's so easy to avoid just by expanding on the detail or adding different things to that detail.
Mm.
Plus,
I think something that helps with like solidifying those minor character personality traits is thinking how they'd interact with canon characters, or other OCs that they're approved to be friends with, and like, because all the characters in D.Gray-Man are very different, and so you can figure out and how your character would play off of those, because they're in quite a close environment, and you can see from characters like Kanda, who is an asshole, how everyone kind of deals with him, or in another sense, don't deal with him.
Yeah.
By starting fights, avoiding him, etc., etc.
Well, and to kind of tangent from what you said, Mojo, OCs that your OC is friends with, please don't just assume that your character will be friends with another OC that you find just because you are aware of them. If you want your OC to be friends with someone else's OC, make sure you contact the owner of that other OC and don't just assume they'd be friends, because that's kind of like when you kind of insert yourself into an existing friend group and it's just awkward all around.
Yeah. And I guess that's like what we've mentioned before, being thoughtful. If you're using ideas that you're clearly getting inspired by someone else, especially friends. Because there's nothing worse than having a friend who intentionally rips you off. Like, unintentional, that's gonna happen, honestly. That's kind of expected, because you're always sharing stuff. But when they intentionally do it, that's when it's kind of a kicker to the gut. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the worst when, friends are the ones. Because, you don't expect it from friends is the thing. Like, the whole thing with friendship is trusting each other, so it's like a betrayal of trust when, that happens.
Oh, I just realized another topic that we've discussed before, like when we were actually planning this talk in the first place, like the entire event talk, is sometimes when you rip something off, as in, like an innocence idea, sometimes you may actually end up going against canon. Because that person has already twisted that information to suit their character in a very specific context. And if you just rip that detail off and put it on your character, it could very well make your character not canon, and, even overpowered, or possibly that evil word, Mary Sue. But again, that's multiple traits, not just one. So that's something to think about, is ripping off things without being aware. Not saying you should rip off, but something to think about. Because not only could you piss someone off, but you could also be damning your character, because that makes no sense for your character and is against canon. And then it's like, well, now you got both worlds of wow.
Well, and then on that note, too, if you see someone who used an innocence idea and you decide to rip it off, that person may have used an idea that was similar to a canon concept, but they changed it to fit their needs. But if you just straight rip it off and don't look to the source material and don't, just make it good, you might actually be doing the same thing that canon did, which would be almost as bad as going against canon.
Yeah, because I definitely know, like, for Kira, there's a specific group of details and context where the weapons she forms from her morphing body armor can shatter. And if you say, yeah, my innocence weapon can occasionally shatter, or it'll shatter under stress, that's against canon, because the actual weapon form is not supposed to be that easily destroyed. That's an example to think of. Again, like, that's also one of the reasons we've said before, like, don't just look to fan characters, because they are the second-hand material. you want to look at canon for your primary source.
Mm.
For sure. Plus, like, if you look through the fandom and you see that something hasn't been done, so you're like, okay, then I'll do this. The reason that it hasn't been done before might be because it does show up in canon. Stuff like, for example, yeah, I completely forgot that there was a character with a crossbow within D.Gray-Man. But when I first made Adelphi, I wanted to give her a crossbow, but I decided not to because, hey, it's already a canon thingy. And then I'd completely forgotten about it. And then I recently realized that the person exists, but there's another fan character with a crossbow, so I am definitely not going near that now.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if you got a form that's similar to a cannon, like a common weapon like a crossbow or a bow and arrow, just make it unique. Make it work differently, and you should be fine. Because again, like, I mean, just because you have a sword doesn't mean it has to be used for cutting and slicing. Maybe it has a different function when it's activated.
Just
And
make sure
honestly,
it's not
those
the
are the more
Hell's
creative, because you don't expect that. It's like, hey, that's really cool, So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other things. Frick, I'm so lost in this.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
Had to relocate.
I guess, like, one suggestion I can think of is if you think you might have been ripped off, don't immediately act on it. I definitely suggest, like, putting your character next to the character you're thinking about and writing a list of, like, similarities and differences and figuring out, is that detail really that unique? Could someone else come up with it? That's a definite suggestion on my part. And, if someone accuses you for ripping off and it's, like, a really common detail, try to be patient with that person when you're telling them, no, that's a common detail. Okay, we got a question. Yay, questions!
Oh, we actually got a question.
Yeah, Lou just asked, do you think there are actually people consciously thinking, yes, I will rip off this? I think there are some people like that. I think, personally, I would like to think they're rarer than we think they are.
Yeah.
I think, for the most part, people who end up having almost that train of thought don't realize that it counts as ripping off. They'll just be like, oh, I really like that detail, I'm going to use it, and they don't realize that's, like, ripping off, depending on the detail.
Well, I do know... Oh, no, you go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're fine. I know there are times when, if I've been poring over, like, a drawing or something, I can draw something, like, months later, and for whatever reason, my mind must have, like, latched onto, like, the pose or the expression on the character's face. And, like, as I'm looking back through my sketches and doodles, like, again, months later, I can finally see those similarities, and just... I don't think people often do think, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to rip this off, or, like, oh, I want to copy this exactly.
Yeah.
Like, human minds are just strange things.
I mean, most people honestly aren't looking for conflict, bar certain people. But again, like, most people aren't sitting there trying to cause an absolute shitstorm unless they're actually a troll or they want to actually hurt someone, in which case they're an asshole. But
I'll be the pessimist here. We have seen an example or two of people, we don't see them actually say this, but from their designs, it's almost like they're saying they want to take something but do it better. And that is just about as conscious, I want to rip this off, as I've ever seen. That said, like I said, I've only seen that once or twice, so I don't see it often.
I mean,
it's like
it's pretty rare. Go on, Sissy.
That instance I would almost take as, like, them being just dismissive toward the fact that they are consciously taking this concept. It's like, that does not waive the, like, reality that you are stealing this idea.
Yeah, I think they just don't think that anyone will, call them out on it.
Or they think, I can do this better and it'll still be different enough.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty harmful to the original person who had that idea.
Yeah.
I personally don't recommend doing that, simply because, being thoughtful of others is kind of a human and nice thing to do. But
Yeah.
Plus, like, if the original person sees that, they're either going to get, like, really mad, like, you thought you could do this better than me? Really?
Yeah.
Or, it'll, be really upsetting for them, thinking that maybe you actually will do it better than them.
Yeah, and I think another thing to think about, too, especially with this kind of doing it better, is one thing I've noticed with, like, innocence concerns when it comes to copying is, like, someone has a specific move. It's not, like, an actual all-encompassing, this is what the innocence does, but, like, a specific move that they do. And it kind of does the same thing that someone's innocence that has that as a foundational point does. But I think it really depends. Like, if it's just a really small move that really is pretty different, that's one thing. If it's exactly like this other person's, like, that might be a concern. You might want to talk to the person. Yeah, it's one of those gray areas, and I feel like it really depends. I know Sissy mentioned before, like, there are going to be details that some people aren't bothered by. Like, you could see something and you're like, oh my gosh, I think this person ripped my friend off, but then you go to your friend and your friend's like, no, I'm not really bothered by that,
Right.
So, just something to think about.
For sure.
Oh, our voices are relaxing, yay.
If y'all have any more questions, feel free to ask. I'm glad our voices are relaxing, because I was really worried this would be a really stressful talk, but it's been great so far. I'm so happy.
I'm glad that my voice is actually cooperating.
Yeah.
Oh, looks like we have a say in the chat now.
Oh.
What to
Hey,
say?
I mentioned Olivia. You'll have to look back.
Mm.
No
if y'all have
tequila
any more,
yet, though.
no tiki legs, yeah. So, like, if y'all have any further questions about, like, ripping off or copying or what we think, we can discuss that. I'm kind of looking over our outline. I think we mostly touched on everything.
Yeah, I think so.
We've captured a broad range of topics.
So I know that I blabbered earlier about a time that, I had to change my plans for my character. Have you guys experienced that? Anyone in the chat or, in this audio?
A couple times, like, just names I was looking at and colours I was looking at. And originally I kind of wanted to have a dressy kind of coat for Fee, but then I saw some others and I felt like if I was going to do something, it was going to be too similar, and so I didn't do it. And then I eventually came on the design with the epaulets. Epaulets? Yeah. Those things on our shoulders. A question.
Sorry, go on. You're good.
Wait, do you want me to read the question?
Oh, no, wait, I think Sissy had something to say, unless she was reading the question.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention, I guess, that I had the same situation in terms of naming my OC, because originally I had, like, thought of the name in my head as soon as I sketched out her character outline, and I realized later on that one of the D.Gray-Man OCs in the fandom went by, like, their nickname predominantly, but their actual name was the same one I had chosen for my character. And I ended up changing it, and, like, I love the new name so much better, so, like, not that the original one was bad or anything, just it matched my character better.
Yeah, and I mean, there are going to be really common names, but I definitely suggest if you see someone with a name already like that, alter the name you're using slightly. Like, there are so many different ways to spell certain names, like Catherine. You can say Cat, Catty, Catherine, Catherine with a C, Catherine with a K, there's
I have it with a Y. And there's a bit in it where it's Catharin, and I know someone who's not got, like, that second or third A in it, and it always throws me off when I spell her name and stuff like that. And there's so many different varieties, especially, like, in a lot of my classes, there are a lot of Catherines, and they all go by different names. And there's ways to kind of get around it if you want to stick with the same name.
Yeah, because I actually entirely missed what Chica said and what y'all answered, so I think we can go on with the questions. Do y'all want to read it, or like?
I can read it.
Okay.
Looks like we have two actually. Yay!
We've got one from Razy.
Yeah.
And then one from Ari.
Yeah. We've got Ray's question, which is, what do you think when people imitate/mimic people's drawing/writing style? I don't know how to phrase this, but like when you read something from them, you immediately think of someone else.
I guess in that case, yeah. We briefly have something in our outline talking about like paying homage to another, like artist style or work or a piece of art versus like the idea of copycatting it, which is I guess what we've been covering this entire time. But I think it's different if you are upfront about being like, I really love this person's style and I wanted to like kind of do my own work with it, because I've seen some of the artists that I follow do this, and like I don't think it's a problem. They spoke to the artist that they're paying homage to before they actually upload the picture, because like it's one thing to practice with it and it's another thing to like kind of add your own twist onto what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean some people do tribute artworks, but I think when it comes to imitating, if you're ever planning to imitate someone's drawing or writing style, you definitely need to alter it in a way that makes it your own. And it would definitely not hurt for you to courtesy credit that original person.
And get express permission.
Yeah, because especially if you're like offering commissions in that person's style, that's pretty low.
Yeah.
Especially if you haven't gotten permission.
Yeah.
Because you're basically selling what they've created, which is their style that they've worked so hard to make.
And I know it can be difficult where, because as artists, a lot of people tend, like I know, at least I am, I'm always learning when I'm even just looking at a picture and watching people's streams, and I want to learn from them, pick up tips and tricks and little things to help make myself better. But you've got to find the boundary between picking up a trick or like a way of drawing something that might suit you better and fully imitating the style.
Yeah, I think a great example I can give is like I learned how to, I was learning on my own, but I learned a lot of the techniques I use today in my coloring style from Razy. Like, I watch so many of her drawings, and we're best friends, and we tend to share, like, techniques. But on the same hand, if you put our artworks next to each other, while you can kind of see the similarities, they're still very different. Different highlighting done, different shading done, different slight styles, like, yeah, you could say, I can see where she got that influence from, but at the same time, you wouldn't necessarily mistake them as the same thing.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is that, you took that basis that Razy helped you find, but then you went completely your own direction with it. It was never your intent to stay side by side with her style. And that not only paid a lot of respect to Razy and what she does as an artist, but it also turned you into an insanely strong one yourself. And I don't just say that as like flattery, but like straight up, you have awesome art, and it's a result of all your hard work.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, too, of, like, the whole reason that people start learning by copying others is so they can turn it into their own style. They're not supposed to just keep copying.
Right.
They're supposed to use it as a foundation to set off on their own journey of finding their own art style. And so if you're continuously ripping off things, like, you're not going the natural route you should be heading towards a direction that's going to make something creative to yourself, something individualistic. So,
Ari mentioned that in chat too. She said, "Yeah, you should only do it occasionally. Don't make it your new style or something, because it's not a new style if you're copying it."
Well, and Ari also had a question right after Razy. What should you do if you confront someone about copying, but they refuse to stop?
that's a fun one.
If by fun you mean kind of tricky, then yeah.
It depends entirely on that person's attitude towards it. They may still not realize that they're still fucking up,
Yeah.
or they may realize it and just not give a shit. And in the case that they realize it and don't give a shit, that really sucks.
Yeah.
I think we covered it a little bit before, is like, you might want to get some backup, and maybe someone can word it in a different way that they'll actually receive and understand. Yeah. I'm really hoping we never have that, but...
Yeah. Because it's a difficult thing to get across.
Yeah.
It's not easy to say, stop doing that thing that you're doing, and the thing that you have been doing for months, or whatever.
Yeah, and even if someone does that, like, I would avoid call-out journals as long as you possibly can. I mean, if they're starting to take commissions in what's clearly your style, or they're starting to draw a character that is clearly yours, it's really hard to go to DeviantArt admins about this, because they're... I'll talk shit about them, but basically they have really poor customer service, guys, and you can't always rely on them. So that's kind of the point where you got to get help from friends. And again, like, don't mob this person. Just try to see if someone else can word it in a way that they'll receive. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm behind because I had, moved my screen up to hold on to that question, and then now I'm like lost in the chat.
There was another question by Alyssa. Do you think it's possible to copy a character's facial features, not like scars, but certain shapes and forms of their facial structure? I
think it depends.
Yes and no, because obviously with human anatomy there's shapes that are repeated, and
yeah, I think it really depends on, like, your art style too.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, the general anime manga style is to have really big eyes, or like certain shapes that are just really common, and you can't really say no one can use that if you're using it yourself and it's been seen in official material.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty disrespectful if, like, someone does a twist of their own that is clearly unique and you just take that with, like, without a care. But I mean, it's just really hard to say, I claim this nose shape, because I mean, everyone does have different nose shapes, but it can be limited to the style. So
yeah, there's real people out there with those nose shapes, and so are you claiming authority over their own physical nose, like?
So then, in the case of something like that, I'd say if you do want to try like experimenting with nose shapes or face shapes, I'd say look at official artworks, like maybe reference anime and manga panels instead of deviant artists. Like, if there's a really well-known artist whose style you enjoy, then that's one thing, but it'll be more respectful if you look at official art of, say, something copyrighted that, like, thousands of people have seen, than if you, for example, look at your friend's artwork. That would just be really crappy.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that Razy does with her art that I really like and would love to do myself, but I recognize that that's her style, and it would be pretty disrespectful for me to just use it out on the fly. Like, I mean, yeah, it's cool, and I can practice it, and she's let me practice stuff like that before, but I wouldn't turn it into something that is a main quality of my style, because she wouldn't be comfortable with that, and out of respect for her, I wouldn't do that. You know?
Though I would like to say I would love to learn how she draws hands, and they look so good.
Right?
I just a couple swipes of the stylus, and bam, lovely hands, and it's like, how? Aside from selling my soul to the devil, how?
Suffering is how.
Yeah. And I mean, if there is a detail you like, again, you should tweak it to the point that it actually looks like yours. So.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, as far as copying the facial features goes, I think it would be hard to argue for a specific part of the face, like you were mentioning, but just like with the personality traits or the uniform details, like, if you start seeing a pattern of, like, the different facial features that they've added up to kind of make you suspicious about that, then I can see getting upset over it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've been on joins and I've taught people how to color something a certain way or like shape something a certain way, and that's one thing. But it just depends on the intent and how the artist feels about it. There are some things you just can't claim.
Right.
Yeah,
like just be courteous.
Yeah, like with brush settings in regards to digital art, you can use the same brush as someone else. Like, I'm always happy to give out my brush settings, but I know, some people aren't comfortable with that. But it's the way that you use it is what will define your coloring style or your drawing style. And like, I made a brush for Koto. And I don't use it very much, but when I did use it and she used it, we get completely different results because we have different coloring styles. So it's all about how you do it.
We have like solidly reached like almost the 2-hour mark, and we've gotten so much material covered. I'm so happy.
Heck yeah. Definitely doing better than we did in our Innocence videos.
Yeah.
There's so much to cover about Innocence, and they all go off on different tangents. It's really hard.
Yeah. If there are any more questions, I'm trying to like think of anything we didn't cover.
I think we covered most of it.
Yeah.
Oh, now it looks like folks are mentioning things in art style. I know that in my drawing class, my art professor always mentions that I make the legs too long like superheroes, and I'm like, I'm sorry. You can't blame me when I'm looking up at these models, and that's the first thing I see is those long, beautiful legs.
Crazy.
Again.
Yes, again.
One of these days it'll happen for real.
So she wants to remarry you again.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I notice sometimes that I do like the legs really long as well, and like you'll just have like a really small top half, and then like the legs and like all the hips are just like 3 times bigger than they need to be. I was like, gotta shrink that. But what can I say? I just love drawing fantastic thighs.
What was it? One of my college friends saw my drawing of Owl, and he said that you draw your characters with like a size 3 hip and 3 waist and a 99 hip, and I love it. And I was like, thank you. I'm trying to be realistic here, but
I think I take a few liberties on my anatomy, especially in regards to the hip and waist and boobs, probably. But I don't mind being a little bit,
Can you copyright boobs? I mean, I would totally be up for trying to copyright boobs. I like boobs. Okay, that was a joke. But anyway, you make the answer cheesy if you say, I already said yeah.
I just had a thought though that if you two get married, then usually they're supposed to ride off on like a steed or something, but you're my steed, so how would that work?
Maybe you've got to reverse the roles.
I'm sorry, I don't do the whole saddle thing.
I'm looking over our outline, and I think we legitimately covered everything.
Did we want to ask if anyone has like anything they want to see covered in the Innocence / Dark Matter video?
Yeah, and if there are any more questions you think of randomly, still.
Oh yeah, we can totally backtrack.
Oh man, what were we gonna cover in the next one? I had a list. I do have a list.
Well, we'd mentioned dark matter, but I still legit don't know what my contribution to that would be, because...
Me either, to be honest.
Oh, wait, all of my manga are still in my backseat of my Jeep, haha.
The helix of life, you guys. No idea.
Yeah, we have legit covered everything. This is so impressive. Like, I am so proud of us.
We
and thank you to everyone in the chat, too.
Yes, for sure. Wow, I feel like we actually accomplished something, you guys. I don't know how to feel about this.
What's that noise?
Is that clapping?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
my one-person applause for us.
Who are you beating up?
Is someone running? What?
I'm sorry, my clapping sucks.
You're good. You have like the golfer's clap or whatever that. I don't know.
Okay. I do remember like what were suggested next topics. Definitely, we need to finally finish Innocence and Dark Matter.
Yeah.
After that, we had stuff like making your character's background information or filling out the character bio. We
Yeah.
also had what do exorcists do on a daily basis, like even at the order and stuff.
Yeah.
There
I hope Mojo isn't doing that, Alyssa. That would be terrible.
Oh my god.
Oh, wow!
Oh, I'm looking over the things that we had.
That one can stay in chat. We won't mention
Not
that one
yet,
on record.
Alicia, not yet.
Do I want to look at the chat?
No, you don't.
Let's protect her. Protect Chica.
Much appreciated. I'm just looking over the script now, like some of our early notes, and we have stuff like efficiency, modern elements, creativity versus believability. So yeah, we still have plenty of things to talk about, and I'm sure that people will bring up more things that they want to hear us go on about in future comments.
Alyssa, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think anyone in this chat is innocent.
Oh my god.
Guys, you're gonna make me look.
You don't want to look, Chelsea.
Well, I mean, the description in the D.Gray-Talk is Tiki stole Alan's innocence, Rhodes stole his first kiss, and Just Debbie tapped his butt, so...
I never got to see that whole thing. He did, though? I forgot the thing about Just Debbie.
Oh, it was during the, when they stole the keys out of his back pocket. I mean, you kind of have to tap his butt to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was like low key.
And wasn't the flap? Was it no? What was it under the flap of his coat?
No, I think the
Like,
belt's
in that
on the
back
outside.
Okay, so I was gonna say like otherwise they would have to reach up, and that would just be weird.
We're going over, like, the specifics of how this could happen.
Oh.
What are we?
Okay, I live in a bunker.
Okay, so I guess, like, at this point it's just ramble, because we've finished everything. So unless y'all have anything you want discussed at the moment. Aside from, just Debbie tapping Alan's butt.
And the logistics of that.
The circumstances.
You guys.
Not sorry, really. I'm not even gonna try to be sorry. Let's be honest. It comes natural after all these years of sinning.
Okay. I think, we're covered then. We can probably...
Yeah.
We can continue the chat, like, the actual chat on
Yeah.
DeviantArt in the chat room. But I think that's it for our video today.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks for coming and having great questions.
Yeah.
And thank you for an awesome discussion, too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for being so respectful to each other and not naming names and just being awesome.
Being chill.
Yeah.
Like, I think that we know we are.
Yeah. Because that means so much, and I think that shows a lot for like the improvement we've had in this community. So.
For sure. And the fact that we can bring up such sensitive topics as this, and still have the same respect as we do in like the more silly chats is just awesome.
Yeah. But I guess until next time then.
Yep.
As always, feel free to leave like suggestions and feedback on the journal or any statuses that were posted.
Or on the video itself, like, you know, anywhere.
We have a comment section, and there's a little like button too. And fun fact, someone disliked our first video. I'm pretty curious about that. I kind of feel like it's an achievement, though. It means we're doing right because someone got pissy. But,
yeah. All right. Well, I guess we will catch you guys next time.
Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.